Welcome to In the Hot Seat with the Tenney Group. I'm Spencer Tenney. It's good to be with you. What in the heck is going on in the final mile space, and what should we expect in 2023? With me to address that, I have the president of the CLDA, Jason Burns. Jason, welcome to the Hot Seat.
Thanks for having me, Spencer. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
All right. Well, but before I kind of mix things up a little bit, get a little heat on you here, let's just take 30 seconds. Tell us about the work that you're doing right now at CLDA.
Yeah, so thanks for having me again. I'm currently the president of the CLDA, which is the Customized Logistics and Deliveries Association. We're a group of almost 3,500 plus professionals in the final mile space. Those are carriers, shippers, vendors, and other support organizations of our industry. And we've been around for 35 plus years, really focused on bringing education, networking, a lot of collaboration, idea sharing around what initially was kind of known as the courier industry. We've evolved originally from our founding days, known as the MCAA, which was the Messenger Courier Association of America, to now the CLDA. But the organization was really founded with the goal of bringing education awareness for our members in what was initially, kind of a niche type of industry that has now grown and what I believe has become, the most critical part of your supply chain today.
It's a great overview. So with that, we'll jump right in there. So just recently, CLDA had your annual event, and you had a very interesting panel of industry thought leaders. Tell us about what was discussed, who was there, and what were some of the insights that were at that table?
Yeah, so we have an annual conference we call our Final Mile Forum. And I say conference, better said, it's probably more of a retreat style format. There's 400 plus professionals. So it's an intimate setting, and we kind of intentionally put our members, again, it consists of a wide variety of different professionals in the space, in an environment where idea sharing, collaboration, roundtable discussions, obviously heavy education, keynote speakers are kind of the word of the day. And it's an environment in which when new members come in, they're really surprised and say, I didn't think I would get this type of access to key decision makers and information from what I would have thought would have been a competitor. So one of the things that we did, I was very happy to host a panel. This is our second year doing this. We called it our Final Mile 360. And we get together a group of what we believe are some of the top thought leaders in the space from different aspects of Final Mile. So we have an executive that's more of an operationally focused executive, a CFO type, CRO, M&A executive, obviously looking at legal, HR, compliance, dealing with ICs. And we put them on a panel, and I kind of lead a session where we ask some probing questions, and really the tough questions, the questions that you kind of want to ask, but you really don't ask publicly. And then we open up to the audience to ask those questions. And the goal is to get a 360-degree view of the industry at a macro level, but then you can drill down specifically into certain aspects of our business. And so I thought it was really well done. It was the last session of our conference, which we intentionally do to kind of hold people there because we're obviously in New Orleans and Mardi Gras season just started last week. But we had a packed room and a lot of good information was shared. And I think it would really help members, both large and small companies, gain some insights into what's happening now and how they can plan out their year for 23.
It's been a roller coaster, specifically in Final Mile. Obviously, we've done a variety of different M&A work in that space. But, I mean, you look at 20, 21, 22, and now 23, a constantly evolving door as far as what's happening, the challenges that we're facing, and what to do about it. So, from your vantage point, I kind of see you as you're kind of out of the weeds. You recently kind of transitioned to support in terms of, former owner operator of a family business, very successful. So now you kind of have a little bit different, unique perspective in terms of like out of the direct operations. And so from your vantage point, what do you see as the top 2 or 3 issues that are most top of mind for the folks that are in your membership there?
Yeah, I think we obviously spent a lot of time last week talking to our members. And I think the two kind of present things that I'm hearing from our members are one, look, the last 18, 24 months, Final Mile has experienced rapid growth. I think we all kind of have seen that happen. We're now starting to see a little bit of that stabilizing. And I think carriers in our space, we feel like we took a step up in the supply chain. I would kind of jokingly always say that I feel like many times we were kind of the stepchild of supply chain, right? No one really wants to do what these courier guys, these final mile guys were doing because, look, it's complicated. We're typically doing very expedited movements, don't really have an opportunity to aggregate a lot of volume together to get that kind of big ROI for a shipper. And so it's complicated, but I think that last 18, 24 months, we saw our segment of the supply chain grow. And I don't just mean grow like from a dollar standpoint, grow from a respect standpoint. Now, when you see this kind of stabilization happening, I think our carriers and our members want to make sure we maintain that and continue to elevate that. And so as we enter in 23, where you have shippers who want to kind of go back to pre-COVID rates with post-COVID expectations, there's a little give and take there, a little push and pull that our members are concerned about. Expenses are still very high. Labor, although it's gotten better, it's still difficult to find quality labor. Retaining drivers is obviously a driver shortage that it's more in the trucking space, but we obviously do see it affecting our world as well. So I think the first thing members want to understand how they continue to operate at a higher clip than what they have years prior to COVID, but do it in a way that's still driving value to our customers, to our shippers, and certainly to the consumers that rely upon our services. The second thing that we see a lot is M&A. So, obviously entering into your world, and in my previous job, as you mentioned, I sold my family's business back in 2020 and joined a national company that I just left from, and I was doing corporate development. And we've seen a tremendous amount of growth in M&A last couple of years in our segment. And I think that with what's happened with the economy, potential recession. I think our members are trying to understand how do they position themselves if they're looking to exit the space, given that the landscape is shifting, but Final Mile is still growing at a high clip. And so I think, most of our members have been doing this for many, many years. And I think they just want to understand how can they continue to add the value for their business that they've been focused on for the last 25, 30 years or so.
I think that's great. And I think that what we can agree on is that, this is a very challenging space to get margin, like low margin, highly fragmented, area of the supply chain. And so, and because of that, a lot of investors see tremendous opportunity, but the problem still remains. Like how do you get this function of the supply chain more efficient? And so I want to kind of shift the conversation a little bit to technology, because I think that there is a host of different options. So where do you see it in terms of, like, you see all the these things in terms of artificial intelligence? There's so many different ways to integrate that into operations to become more efficient, to complement with the human element. Where do you think, how should folks that are doing what you have done in this space, how should they be thinking about technology as far as integrating that into their operations to become a more viable operation?
That was probably my third issue that we discussed a lot at the conference, technology. To your point, historically our industry has been highly fragmented, and it's to your point, low margin, high volume, low margin is kind of the key to success in our space. Technology is a differentiator. And obviously, what we know is that today it's table stakes to be in the game. You got to have a competitive technology solution. And as our segment continues to evolve and attract larger shippers than what historically have used our services, there are higher and higher requirements on that. That's in somewhat of a conflict with typically smaller companies. Most of our members are probably sub $10 million of top line revenue. So they don't have the large budgets or the IT infrastructure staff to manage that and to execute or to even manage the risk associated with that. The other factor that we see at play is, look, we are in literally the reason we changed our name. from MCA to CLDA is because we're offering customized logistics, right? We're going to do what the big four won't do. We're going to do what the LTL segment won't do. We're going to do what the FTL segment won't do. We're going to customize the solution for you. And so when you're offering a solution, obviously, the good thing about it is you're really meeting the customer where they are. The challenge is that it's hard to standardize, both internally within your operation and certainly as we look across, the spectrum of the industry. So standardization is something we talk a lot about. How do we, as an association or an industry, start to level the playing field, if you will, from a standardization standpoint, so that we're creating specs and requirements so that it's easier for our carrier members to integrate and interface with larger shippers and 3PLs that really are starting to use our services more. So we're going to put some focus on that this year. I think it'll be very beneficial to not only our members, but to many of our customers that use our services, because it really, in order for us to take that next step, I think this is going to be a key component of that. And also as a corollary to that, data visibility. Right? We were very fortunate to have FreightWaves leading economist Anthony Smith be our keynote speaker for the conference this year. And we've been working with FreightWaves behind the scenes to work on a solution where we can bring more final mile data to the supply chain community. And so we can continue to make some inroads on that front, because I think ultimately the more data and visibility we can bring, the more we'll be able to execute as an industry and continue to gain that respect that we want to have in the supply chain.
I think that's wonderful, because I think we can both agree that there certainly are some data gaps to this very specialized component of the supply chain. I mean, you have
Yeah.
a shrinking pool of subject matter experts. That's why, in terms of private equity, why are they so interested in this space is because no one wants to go figure this out. They want to acquire the proven subject matter experts and then resource them so that they can create the standardization that you're talking about, which I think is so key. But so I want to ask you this. So,
Yep. Yep.
you mentioned the M&A. Like, I think that you have a really unique perspective because you've been acquired, you've come along and worked with the acquiring company in a support corporate development capacity moving forward, and now you're kind of transitioning out to like a very unique perspective for our audience to kind of comment on that. So what would you describe as some of your takeaways from that experience that you would want other people to know about, like family-owned business, the buying process, and then the support post-transaction? What are one or two things that you would say, like, hey, here's some advice that I would give for people that are kind of thinking about that and how to make the most of it?
Yeah, good question. I think the first thing I would advise anyone to do is to, it sounds elementary, but do your homework, do your due diligence. When you the first thing you want to understand is it starts with an internal conversation, right? So in my case, I was in a family business. My parents, we had a business partner. We spent a lot of time before we went out to market to discuss what this meant for us individually and then collectively. So I think first you want to make sure you have that emotional conversation, because the reality is this is not just a business transaction. It is very emotional. And so you want to kind of check that box off first and make sure you have a good sense of where you are and where, if you have partners, where they may be on that spectrum. And then once you get into it, what I always try to advise, even when I was working for the company that acquired us, I would advise owners, and I think it helped me because I just went through the experience, to say, look, you should be asking just as many questions of us as we're asking of you. You really want to know who you're kind of getting in bed with, for lack of a better term. And what that really means specifically is, what are their goals and objectives? How do they align with your culture, your people, your employees that probably made you successful and put you in a position to sell your business? And then what is the role and how does that impact you and what you want to do for your future? There is a lot of activity right now in this space, but selling your business is not for everyone. And then selling your business to a specific company, I think you have to really, really kind of do your homework and make sure you understand that. In our case, I felt we were very fortunate. We landed with a company that, everything they committed to, they delivered upon, took care of our staff. That was really important for us. And I thought we had a fair valuation, and created some opportunities, some up mobility opportunities for our staff. So we were very happy and satisfied with it. but it's emotional. It's an emotional piece, and that's typically even in my work doing corporate development. That's where the sticking point normally gets to. It's not so much the numbers per se. I mean, I think you all ultimately get to a number. It's the emotional ties to the business, the relationships, the people, your customers. So spend a lot of time on the emotional part, just as much on the financial part.
I'm not going to let you off the hook that easily. So I'm gonna dig in here because being a family-owned business
Yeah.
is well. Provide us, tell us about a time where you're talking with the family about the family business, and maybe you're not 100% aligned on what the next move is. Can you tell us about a time like that?
I could probably tell you about 100 times like that. um, yeah, I think well, as it relates to us selling, I'll stay within the subject we're on. We were at a point. So in my case, my parents founded our business back in the mid '80s. I came in 2008 and kind of worked my way up and ultimately became the president. And working with our business partner, we had a lot of success and growth. And I think things were going fairly well. We were doing well. We were on the Inc. 5000 list 4 years in a row. Um, but I personally wanted a different challenge, and I felt I was getting a little burnt out, and then also being in the position I am with the CLDA, saw some trends happen at the macro level that I thought, could negatively impact where we were as a business, and so having to explain that to my parents, and really kind of tell them, hey, this is something that I'm really adamant about, and I think that we should strongly consider this. When that probably wasn't where they were at that time, and so working through that, spending I mean, it honestly probably took about
Right.
6 months of conversation internally, particularly for my father, who was really this was his baby that he started, and so there's an attachment there that unless you are the founder of a business and you did it from ground up and went through all the trials and tribulations, you just don't have that same affinity to it. And so that was a lot of the emotional part to it as well. And then, and in our case, we were doing this in the height of the response to the George Floyd tragedy. And, we were a black-owned business. We were one of the largest black-owned businesses in Louisiana. And there was also just a sense of pressure. Are we exiting at the right time? Is this what we should be doing at this time? What does this mean for our community? And so there's another element of that we had to deal with. And so fortunately, we were able to get on the same page. It took a while, but I think in hindsight, not everyone is happy that we made those decisions and have moved forward in the right direction.
I think that's so fascinating. I mean, all the nuances that influence how families communicate and get on the same page. I really appreciate giving us a lens into that. So, one more question, but before I do that, just tell us about for folks that are around either as a an operator or a supplier within the final mile or customized logistics space. Tell us how they can get a little bit more involved in the CLDA.
Yeah. So our website is simply clda.org. As I mentioned, we have kind of two annual events we do. One is our in-person Final Mile Forum, and we do an executive leadership summit. Typically, it's in the October timeframe, which is more of a kind of the top management level, where we're going to do a day and a half course, workshop style, on educate them on industry trends, best practices, etc. And then throughout the course of the year, we have virtual webinars. We provide a lot of education and content to our members. So you can find us pretty much anywhere online. LinkedIn is probably the most active place that we'll be at. And really, what I would tell you about CLDA, if you're looking for a show to go attend, that's not us. But you're looking for an association that's going to provide you with education. I haven't mentioned, but we do a fair amount of advocacy work on behalf of our members, specifically regarding the proper use of the independent contractor business model. Obviously, we're highly involved right now with what's happening with the Department of Labor. We spend a lot of time looking at DOT rules and regulations and how that may or may not impact our members. So you're looking for an association that's going to advocate on your behalf, and then also one that's going to really help you connect the dots to build long-term, lasting, sustainable relationships, where you're really going to be able to pick the phone up and call someone you met at a conference or one of our webinars and say, hey, how did you execute on this? How did you get into pharmaceutical deliveries? What were the pitfalls doing two-man white glove deliveries? How did you negotiate your first lease for a warehouse? If you're looking for that type of environment and to build those relationships and that network, a lot of mentorship, we're the place for you.
Pretty good sales pitch right there. Take notes, folks. Take notes. All right, one last question. A little bit of a wild card here, Jason. So,
Yep.
some folks may know, maybe they don't. You're a former collegiate athlete, football, Vanderbilt. Offline, we were talking about your children quickly becoming super athletes, and so I'm curious, as a fellow dad who's raising aspiring athletes, for someone in your experience who's played at a high level, how does that affect how you coach kids? Like, how involved do you get? How hands off? Like, I'm just curious with your experience, how has that influenced how you coach your kids?
Yeah, man, so I'm the best person to answer this question, but I'm a very involved dad. Yeah, so I don't think I'm over the top, but I think the one thing I try to do with my kids is to be honest with them, and that started as early as my son was doing t-ball at 3. He reminded me last night that we were in Dick's buying a $400 bat for his travel baseball season coming up. Um, and my daughter, I mentioned to you now, she's the only girl in the entire flag football league, and she's killing it. But here's the thing. I think that helped me a lot, and I'm I come from a pedigree of athletes and coaches, and I think the thing that I try to impart to my kids is, look, if this is something you want to do, something you're serious about, it's going to take a certain level of dedication, hard work, and commitment, and that's with anything in life. Um, but we actually watch a lot of we watch Last Chance U. I probably shouldn't be watching my kids watching Last Chance U. Some of the language there. We watch Hard Knocks on HBO, and they get a firsthand sense of what it is at the highest level. And so obviously these are kids. My kids will be 9 years old next month, uh, but already in their mind, they understand the value and meaning of hard work. And so even when they're at practice now, I can see them, treating practice a little bit different than some other kids that may be, thinking a social hour. And and look, I'm probably a little bit different than the most dads because my background. But ultimately, I think that that's what it's going to take for anything they want to excel in their life, is that they're going to have to put the time, commitment, and dedication into it. And what you put in is normally what you're going to get out of it.
Good word right there. And we're going to leave it right there. Mr. Burns, thanks again for coming to the hot seat. We will see you next time.